Picture this: Hollywood's golden age of silent films, where stars were gods and scandal was just a whisper away from destroying everything. But what happens when those whispers become screams that threaten to topple an entire industry? The silent era wasn't just about pratfalls and title cards. It was about power, corruption, and secrets so dark they nearly buried Tinseltown forever. Ready to discover the 15 silent movies so scandalous they almost ended Hollywood? Buckle up. The Sheik, 1921. Ever wonder what happens when a movie becomes so sexually charged it makes Victorian-era audiences lose their minds? Welcome to The Sheik, starring Rudolph Valentino as a desert prince who abducts and seduces a British woman played by Agnes Ayres. This wasn't your typical romance. This was pure, unadulterated controversy wrapped in exotic locations and smoldering gazes. The film sparked nationwide outrage for its portrayal of what critics called savage passion and dangerous foreign influence. Religious groups denounced it as immoral propaganda that would corrupt American women, while moral crusaders demanded it be banned outright. The Catholic Church went ballistic, claiming the film promoted Oriental degeneracy and threatened Christian values. Women's groups organized boycotts, arguing the movie glorified abduction and assault. But here's the kicker: audiences couldn't get enough of it. Women swooned in theaters, men felt threatened by Valentino's exotic appeal, and box office numbers went through the roof. The controversy only fueled its popularity, creating the first modern movie heartthrob and establishing the template for scandal-driven marketing. Critics accused Valentino of effeminizing American men, leading to public challenges to his masculinity and even boxing matches to prove his manhood. The film's impact was seismic. It introduced America to the concept of the Latin lover, while simultaneously terrifying conservative society. Censorship boards across the country demanded cuts, particularly of scenes showing Valentino's passionate embraces and the implied seduction sequences. The movie became a lightning rod for debates about morality, foreign influence, and women's liberation, all wrapped up in one controversial package that Hollywood both celebrated and feared. Intolerance, 1916. What do you get when a director spends an astronomical fortune creating the most ambitious movie ever made, only to watch it nearly destroy his career and bankrupt his studio? You get D.W. Griffith's Intolerance, a film so massive and controversial it almost single-handedly brought down the nascent movie industry. Fresh off the racist backlash from Birth of a Nation, Griffith decided to make a statement about, ironically, intolerance throughout history. The film weaved together 4 separate stories spanning centuries, featuring Babylon's fall, Christ's crucifixion, the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre, and a contemporary tale of industrial oppression. With a budget of over $2 million, equivalent to about $50 million today, it featured massive sets, thousands of extras, and production values that wouldn't be matched for decades. The controversy wasn't just about content this time, it was about hubris. Critics savaged the film's preachy message and confusing narrative structure, while audiences stayed away in droves. Religious groups attacked its portrayal of Christ and biblical events, claiming Griffith was mocking Christianity. Political groups condemned its pro-labor stance and criticism of capitalism, calling it socialist propaganda. The film's anti-war message, released during World War I tensions, was seen as unpatriotic. But the real scandal was financial. The movie flopped so spectacularly that it nearly bankrupted Griffith and his production company. Triangle Film Corporation, one of Hollywood's biggest studios, collapsed partly due to the film's massive losses. The failure sent shockwaves through the industry, proving that even the most celebrated directors weren't immune to disaster. Hollywood learned a harsh lesson about artistic ambition versus commercial reality, a lesson that would shape the industry's risk-averse mentality for decades to come. A Woman of Affairs, 1928. If you think Hollywood in the 1920s played it safe, think again. A Woman of Affairs, starring the legendary Greta Garbo and John Gilbert, was a film so scandalous it practically dared censors to shut it down. Adapted from Michael Arlen's risque novel The Green Hat, the film deals with themes of adultery, alcoholism, and even suicide, taboo topics that sent moral guardians into a frenzy. The production was immediately in trouble with censors. The original story included a heroin addiction and explicit sexual affairs, both of which were sanitized for the screen but couldn't be entirely erased from Garbo's smoldering performance. Audiences and critics knew exactly what was being implied. The infamous Garbo gaze in this film was enough to have church groups across America picketing theaters, demanding a ban on what they called European-style filth. But it was the film's unrepentant treatment of Garbo's character, Diana Merrick, that really lit the fire. She was no traditional heroine. Her sexual independence and refusal to beg for forgiveness broke every rule of Hollywood womanhood. Newspapers across the country debated whether the film glamorized sin. Some cities outright banned it, and the Hays office used A Woman of Affairs as a case study for why Hollywood needed stricter oversight. Despite, or because of, the scandal, the movie became a box office sensation. Garbo's star only rose higher, and A Woman of Affairs helped solidify her reputation as the ultimate Hollywood icon. Dangerous, mysterious, and absolutely unforgettable. The controversy around the film proved once again that nothing sells like a good scandal. Foolish Wives 1922. What happens when a director creates a movie so expensive and morally offensive that it becomes Hollywood's first real public relations nightmare? Ask Erich von Stroheim, whose Foolish Wives became the poster child for everything wrong with Hollywood excess and moral corruption. Stroheim, playing a fake Russian count who seduces wealthy American women, created a character so despicable and predatory that audiences were simultaneously fascinated and repulsed. The film's portrayal of Americans as naive fools ripe for European exploitation struck a nerve in post-World War I America, but it was the behind-the-scenes excess that really caused the scandal. With a budget of over $1 million, it was the most expensive movie ever made at the time. Universal Studios marketed the film as the first million-dollar picture, but that astronomical cost became a liability when moral crusaders used it as evidence of Hollywood's wasteful decadence. The movie featured explicit scenes of seduction, adultery, and manipulation that pushed the boundaries of acceptable content. Censors demanded cuts to scenes showing Stroheim's character drugging and attempting to assault women, while religious groups condemned the entire premise. The real controversy erupted when details of the production emerged. Stories circulated about Stroheim's perfectionist demands, including building full-scale Monte Carlo sets and importing European costumes and props. Critics accused Hollywood of wasting money on foreign directors' vanity projects while American values were under attack on screen. The film's portrayal of American tourists as gullible marks for sophisticated European conmen was seen as particularly insulting. Political ramifications followed quickly. Congress held hearings about Hollywood's moral standards, with Foolish Wives cited as prime evidence of the industry's corruption. The scandal contributed to growing calls for federal censorship and helped fuel the moral panic that would eventually lead to the Hays Code. Stroheim's career never fully recovered, and the film became a cautionary tale about artistic ambition versus commercial responsibility. Within Our Gates, 1920. Ready for a movie so controversial that most Americans never got to see it? Meet Within Our Gates, Oscar Michaud's groundbreaking response to The Birth of a Nation, a film that dared to tell the truth about American racism and paid the ultimate price, virtual erasure from cinema history. Michaud, one of the first African-American filmmakers, created this masterpiece as a direct response to Griffith's racist epic. The film told the story of a black woman trying to raise funds for a rural school, but it was the flashback sequences depicting lynching and racial violence that made it dynamite. Unlike Birth of a Nation's romanticized view of the Ku Klux Klan, Within Our Gates showed the brutal reality of American racial terrorism. The controversy was immediate and devastating. White-owned theater chains refused to screen it, while censorship boards across the country banned it outright. The film's depiction of a near-lynching scene and its unflinching portrayal of white violence against blacks was deemed too inflammatory for mixed audiences. Even some black community leaders worried the film was too provocative and might incite retaliation against black communities. What made the situation worse was the film's release timing. The Red Summer of 1919 had seen unprecedented racial violence across America, and nervous authorities saw any film addressing race relations as potentially explosive. Censors cut entire sequences, including scenes showing white mobs attacking black communities and corrupt white officials exploiting black farmers. The Chicago Board of Censors initially banned the film entirely before allowing a heavily edited version to be shown only to black audiences. The most tragic aspect of this scandal was its lasting impact. While racist films like Birth of a Nation received national distribution and acclaim, Within Our Gates was buried and forgotten. For decades, film historians assumed it was lost forever until a copy was discovered in Spain in the 1970s. Hollywood's systematic suppression of black voices in cinema had claimed one of its most important early victims, proving that some scandals aren't about what's shown, they're about what's deliberately hidden. Greed 1924. Ever seen a director so obsessed with authenticity that he nearly destroys his cast, bankrupts his studio, and creates a movie so long it's literally unwatchable? Welcome to Erich von Stroheim's Greed, a film that pushed the boundaries of cinematic excess so far it became a legend of Hollywood insanity. Stroheim adapted Frank Norris's novel, McTeague, with fanatical dedication to detail, filming on actual locations including Death Valley during summer heat that nearly killed his actors. His original cut ran over 8 hours long, longer than most film festivals. The story of a dentist whose obsession with gold destroys everyone around him became a metaphor for Stroheim's own destructive perfectionism. MGM executives were horrified when they saw the footage. Louis B. Mayer reportedly called it the most depressing and sordid movie ever made, while Irving Thalberg worried that audiences would leave theaters traumatized. The film's unflinching depiction of poverty, domestic violence, and human degradation was unlike anything Hollywood had produced. Scenes of brutal beatings, animal cruelty, and psychological torture made censors squirm. The real scandal was Stroheim's methods. He forced actors to work in 130-degree Death Valley heat, leading to several hospitalizations. Zasu Pitts, playing the female lead, reportedly suffered a nervous breakdown from the director's psychological pressure. Stroheim's demands for authentic props included real gold for dental work and corpses for death scenes, creating production costs that spiraled out of control. When MGM finally released a butchered 2-hour version, critics called it incomprehensible, while lamenting the loss of Stroheim's vision. The director was fired mid-production on his next film, effectively ending his directing career. The original footage was destroyed, making Greed one of cinema's greatest lost masterpieces. Hollywood learned a brutal lesson about artistic vision versus commercial reality. Sometimes genius and madness are indistinguishable, and both can be equally destructive. The Blackbird 1926. What do you get when you combine Lon Chaney's horrifying transformation abilities with a story about criminal deception so twisted it makes audiences question reality? You get The Blackbird, a film that pushed the boundaries of identity manipulation and moral confusion to breaking points that left viewers genuinely disturbed. Chaney played dual roles as the Blackbird, a criminal mastermind, and his fake brother, a crippled priest used as an alibi. The transformation scenes where Chaney physically contorts his body into grotesque shapes were so convincing that audiences believed they were watching actual deformity. The film's central premise, using religious faith as a cover for criminal activity, outraged religious groups who saw it as blasphemous mockery of Christianity. The controversy deepened when details of Chaney's methods emerged. The actor subjected himself to extreme physical torture to achieve his transformations, binding his legs in painful positions and using mechanical devices to distort his body. Medical professionals warned that Chaney's techniques could cause permanent injury, while critics questioned the ethics of subjecting audiences to such disturbing imagery. Religious leaders condemned the film's portrayal of a fake priest who manipulates believers' faith for criminal purposes. The Catholic Church organized boycotts, claiming the movie attacked the sanctity of religious vocation and encouraged anti-clerical sentiment. Several cities banned screenings, while others demanded cuts to scenes showing the false priest performing religious ceremonies. The psychological impact on audiences was unprecedented. Viewers reported nightmares and anxiety attacks after seeing Chaney's transformations. The film's exploration of identity manipulation and reality distortion struck deep psychological nerves, particularly in an era when mental health was poorly understood. Critics worried that such extreme content could trigger psychological disorders in susceptible individuals. MGM executives were torn between the film's commercial success and the growing backlash. The scandal demonstrated how Chaney's unique talents could both attract and terrify audiences, establishing him as cinema's first true master of physical horror while raising uncomfortable questions about the limits of entertainment. The Road to Ruin, 1928. Imagine a movie so explicit in its portrayal of teenage sexuality and drug use that it makes modern films look tame. That's exactly what happened with The Road to Ruin, a supposedly educational film that used moral messaging as an excuse to show everything censors normally banned. Marketed as a cautionary tale about the dangers of jazz-age youth culture, the film actually reveled in depicting wild parties, drug use, sexual experimentation, and teenage pregnancy with unprecedented explicitness. The story followed a group of high school students whose involvement with alcohol and loose morals leads to tragic consequences, but the real draw was the graphic content that filled every frame. The scandal erupted when censors realized they'd been tricked. The film's educational facade allowed it to bypass normal content restrictions, but audiences were treated to scenes that would have been cut from mainstream Hollywood productions. Young women in revealing clothing engaged in suggestive dancing, while drug use was shown in graphic detail. The movie's depiction of teenage sexuality was so explicit that several states launched investigations. Religious and civic groups organized massive protests, claiming the film was more corrupting than the behaviors it supposedly condemned. Parents' associations demanded criminal charges against theater owners, while educators worried the film was actually instructing teenagers in delinquent behavior. The movie's realistic portrayal of drug effects and sexual activity provided a how-to guide disguised as moral instruction. The controversy revealed a crucial loophole in film censorship that exploitation filmmakers would abuse for decades. By claiming educational value, producers could show content that would never pass normal censorship review. The road to ruined success spawned countless imitators, creating an entire genre of educational films that pushed moral boundaries while hiding behind righteous messaging. The long-term impact was enormous. Censorship boards tightened their standards for educational films, while moral crusaders used the road to ruin as evidence that Hollywood couldn't be trusted to self-regulate. The film's legacy lived on in the exploitation genre, proving that controversy and moral panic could be highly profitable when packaged correctly. The Docks of New York, 1928. Picture this. A movie so gritty and realistic in its portrayal of urban vice that it makes modern crime dramas look like Disney films. Joseph von Sternberg's The Docks of New York didn't just push boundaries, it obliterated them with a raw depiction of prostitution, violence, and moral decay that left audiences stunned. The film followed a stoker who saves a suicidal prostitute and marries her on a whim, but it was the unflinching portrayal of waterfront life that caused the scandal. Sternberg showed prostitution, gambling, violence, and alcoholism with documentary-like realism that shocked audiences accustomed to sanitized Hollywood entertainment. The movie's visual style emphasized shadows and moral ambiguity, creating an atmosphere of corruption that permeated every scene. Censorship boards went ballistic over the film's content and tone. The story's casual acceptance of prostitution as a way of life, combined with its sympathetic portrayal of criminals and outcasts, violated every moral standard of the era. Religious groups condemned the film's suggestion that redemption could come without proper repentance, while moral crusaders attacked its glamorization of vice. The controversy intensified when critics realized the film's artistic ambitions. Rather than condemning the characters' behavior, Sternberg presented their world with poetic beauty that made vice appear attractive. The famous fog-shrouded docks became symbols of moral confusion, while the film's ending suggested that love could triumph over corruption without traditional moral consequences. International reactions were even more extreme. British censors banned the film entirely, claiming it represented American moral decay, while religious groups across Europe used it as evidence of Hollywood's corrupting influence. The movie became a diplomatic embarrassment, with foreign governments questioning American cultural values. The film's lasting impact was enormous. It proved that silent cinema could achieve psychological and moral complexity that rivaled literature, but it also demonstrated that such artistic achievement came with a price. The scandal surrounding the Docks of New York contributed to growing calls for stronger censorship that would eventually lead to the production code. The Wild Party, 1929. What do you get when you combine Clara Bow's notorious off-screen reputation with a movie about college party culture so wild it makes Animal House look like a church social? The Wild Party, a film that turned the It Girl into Hollywood's most controversial star while nearly destroying her career in the process. Bow played a college professor who gets involved with her male students in ways that would make modern audiences blush. The film's depiction of 1920s party culture included drinking, sexual experimentation, and moral rebellion that horrified conservative America. But it was Bow's personal scandals, including affairs with married men and wild Hollywood parties, that made the movie radioactive. The timing couldn't have been worse. Released just as the stock market crashed and America entered the Great Depression, the film's celebration of excess and moral abandon seemed tone-deaf and offensive. Religious groups attacked both the movie and Beau personally, claiming she represented everything wrong with modern American values. The Catholic Legion of Decency specifically targeted the film as morally corrupting. Behind-the-scenes scandals made everything worse. Stories circulated about Beau's affairs with co-stars, her gambling debts, and her wild lifestyle. A particularly damaging scandal involved her secretary revealing intimate details about Beau's love life, including affairs with married politicians and Hollywood executives. The publicity nightmare overshadowed the movie itself. The psychological pressure destroyed Beau's mental health. She suffered what would today be recognized as anxiety attacks and depression, but 1920s media portrayed her as unstable and dangerous. The combination of public attacks and personal demons forced her into early retirement at the peak of her career. The Wild Party became her last starring role, a tragic end to one of cinema's most vibrant personalities. The film's legacy was complex. While it captured the spirit of the Jazz Age better than almost any other movie, it also demonstrated how quickly public opinion could turn against Hollywood stars. Beau's destruction served as a warning to other actors about the dangers of living too publicly, while the movie itself became a time capsule of an era that was rapidly ending. Don't Change Your Husband, 1919. Before there was reality TV about cheating spouses, there was Cecil B. DeMille's Don't Change Your Husband, a Hollywood silent that sent shockwaves through polite society. Gloria Swanson stars as a bored housewife trapped in a loveless marriage who, in a plot twist that defied every standard of American virtue, dumps her dull husband for a suave seducer, only to discover that marital bliss is more complicated than it looks. The film scandalized audiences with its frank portrayal of infidelity, divorce, and women's sexual agency. Swanson's character was no shrinking violet. She initiates the affair and chooses her own destiny, which was almost unheard of in 1919. The movie's promotional posters, showing Swanson in revealing gowns and provocative poses, were enough to trigger local bans in several states. Religious leaders and moral watchdogs declared the film a threat to the sanctity of marriage and accused DeMille of promoting adultery as glamorous. Editorials warned that movies like this would destroy the American family. The controversy became so intense that it landed DeMille on the radar of early censorship groups, foreshadowing his later battles with the Hays Code. Yet, Don't Change Your Husband was a smash hit. Swanson became the face of liberated American womanhood, and DeMille cemented his reputation as Hollywood's chief provocateur. The film's legacy? Proving that even in Hollywood's earliest days, scandal, sexuality, and sensationalism were the industry's most potent ingredients. Sadie Thompson, 1928. Ever seen a movie so steamy, so morally outrageous that it turned a church crusade into a box office stampede? Enter Sadie Thompson, the silent classic that made Gloria Swanson a legend and left censors sweating through their collars. Based on Somerset Maugham's notorious story, Rain, the film follows Sadie, a hard-edged, fallen woman running from her past, who lands on a tropical island only to face off with a fire and brimstone missionary played by Lionel Barrymore. From the jump, this film was a powder keg. Swanson fought to make the movie against studio and church resistance, with religious leaders demanding the project be scrapped for glorifying vice and parading sin in Technicolor. The story's sexual tension and Sadie's defiant attitude were too much for moral watchdogs, who insisted on cuts to scenes deemed too suggestive, even as audiences flocked to see exactly what they'd been warned against. But Sadie Thompson didn't just push boundaries, it broke them. The chemistry between Swanson and Barrymore is volcanic, crackling with forbidden desire and condemnation. Sadie's struggle isn't about cheap redemption, it's a battle for dignity in a world rigged by hypocrites. Church groups protested, newspapers debated its influence on impressionable women, and local censors threatened outright bans. In some cities, theaters ran two versions, one for men, one for women, just to dodge the backlash. Despite or because of the uproar, the film was a runaway hit. Swanson's performance was so electric it scored her an Oscar nomination and cemented her reputation as the era's most dangerous woman on screen. Sadie Thompson became shorthand for both glamour and scandal, a movie that proved a little sin can sell, but a lot of it can make you immortal. Hollywood took notes. Controversy isn't just good for business, it's sometimes the whole business.
The Godless Girl, 1929. What happens when a film tackles the twin taboos of sex and atheism, then douses the whole thing in riot scenes, prison brutality, and forbidden romance? You get The Godless Girl, the movie that sent churchgoers into a frenzy and left censors demanding a return to the Dark Ages. Directed by Cecil B. DeMille, A man not exactly known for subtlety, this one goes full throttle. The story: Judy, a high school atheist, leads a campus club called the Godless Society. Think flapper-era shock jocks for Darwin. Her main rival? Bob, the clean-cut Christian boy. Sparks fly, tempers flare, and the two end up locked in a reformatory that's less after-school special and more escape from Alcatraz. What follows is an orgy of violence, fires, brawls, and a love story that refuses to repent. DeMille knew how to poke the bear, and this film was his stick. Church leaders from coast to coast denounced The Godless Girl as a direct attack on faith and American values. Theaters in the Bible Belt refused to show it. Angry mobs threatened to burn them down if they tried. Even city officials in places like Boston and Chicago demanded entire reels be cut, citing incitement to godlessness and moral decay. What made it worse? The film never punishes Judy for her beliefs. Instead, it gives her dignity, complexity, and a shot at happiness, a twist that had sermons raging for months. And let's not forget the infamous riot scene, which put hundreds of extras in real danger and sent actual police scrambling to control the set. The Godless Girl became both a rallying cry and a warning. Hollywood could get away with almost anything, as long as it made people mad enough to talk. The film's scandal set the table for the censor's iron grip in the 1930s, but it also proved that cinema was now a battleground for the soul of America. Want to know why the Hays Code came crashing down? Look no further than this slice of silent-era blasphemy. The Birth of a Nation, 1915. Here it is, the movie that didn't just scandalize America, it nearly tore the country apart and proved that cinema could be the most powerful and dangerous medium ever created. D.W. Griffith's The Birth of a Nation was simultaneously the most technically advanced and morally bankrupt film of the silent era, a masterpiece of cinema, and a monument to American racism that sparked riots, protests, and a national crisis about the power of movies. The film's technical innovations were revolutionary: close-ups, tracking shots, cross-cutting, and battle sequences that wouldn't be matched for decades. At 3 hours long with a budget of over $100,000, it was the most ambitious movie ever made. Audiences had never seen anything like its scope and spectacle. President Woodrow Wilson reportedly said it was like writing history with lightning, and it became the highest-grossing film in history until Gone with the Wind. But the movie's content was pure poison. Based on Thomas Dixon's racist novel, The Klansman, it portrayed the Ku Klux Klan as heroes protecting white civilization from savage African Americans during Reconstruction. Black characters were played by white actors in blackface and depicted as ignorant, violent, and sexually threatening to white women. The film's climax celebrated the Klan's rescue of white society through vigilante terrorism. The reaction was immediate and explosive. Black audiences and their allies organized massive protests in major cities. In Boston, riots broke out during screenings, while Chicago saw street fighting between protesters and supporters. The NAACP launched a nationwide campaign to ban the film, marking one of the organization's first major mobilizations. Several states and cities banned screenings, but the movie's popularity made it impossible to stop entirely. The most horrifying aspect was the film's real-world impact. The movie's romanticized portrayal of the Klan inspired the organization's revival in 1915, with membership growing to millions by the 1920s. Cross burnings and white hood imagery from the film became standard Klan symbolism. Lynch mobs increased in the South following the movie's release, with some historians directly linking the film to renewed racial violence. The scandal changed everything. It proved that movies weren't just entertainment. They were powerful tools of propaganda that could influence behavior and reshape society. The film's success and the backlash it generated led directly to calls for censorship and federal regulation of cinema. Hollywood learned that with great power came great responsibility. though it would take decades for the industry to fully grapple with that lesson. The Birth of a Nation remains both cinema's greatest achievement and its greatest shame, a reminder that art and evil can be inseparably intertwined. So there you have it, 15 silent movies so scandalous they nearly destroyed Hollywood before it even hit its stride. From racist propaganda to sexual liberation, from murder mysteries to moral panics, these films proved that controversy has always been cinema's most powerful drug. The silent era taught Hollywood a crucial lesson: scandal sells, but it can also kill. What's your take on the most shocking film on this list? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and let's keep this conversation alive. Don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into Hollywood's darkest secrets.